Hi everyone, and welcome to Employee Handbook training video. An item to note before we get started is what is the purpose of an employee handbook? Well, it is to present an overview of who Learn is, and it is also to inform you about personnel administration, compensation policies, employee benefits, and other personnel policies. Now in this training today, we will only be covering items in the handbook that will apply to your position within programming. All other items I listed above, such as compensation or benefits, will need to be covered in greater detail by yourselves, reading through the Employee Handbook. With all that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started with our first order of business, Standards of Conduct. Standards of Conduct. Interactions among staff, students, and volunteers is for the purpose of academic assistance, encouragement, and support. Relationships among all participants in the Learn programs must be maintained in a strict and professional manner. Any conversations held with students, aside from personal check-ins, must be of academic nature. This is a standard that we hold for all employees working within Learn. When it comes to supervision, please note that this is your primary role. Any conduct that takes away your attention from students will compromise the safety and integrity of the program. Prohibited conduct includes, but is not limited to, use of electronic device, cell phones, headphones, etc., or use of computers for personal reasons, such as checking your emails, web surfing, or anything else that again takes away from your current job. Now let's talk about punctuality and attendance. Employees are expected to remain at work for their entire work schedule. The only exceptions will be for meal periods or when required to leave unauthorized Learn business. Late arrivals, early departures, or other absence from scheduled hours are disruptive to your fellow employees and/or your supervisor and must be avoided. If you're running late, please call at least an hour ahead of time to allow your direct supervisor and staff time to support the classroom that you're supposed to be in. And if you're going to be absent, please give at least a 24-hour notice. You will also have the opportunity using our EWS system to schedule time off with accrued hours, sick time hours, or schedule non-pay time off. Now let's go into professional demeanor. On the left-hand side, you'll see that communication and professionalism are the two highlights when it comes to professional demeanor. Make sure at all times you are communicating with not only your supervisor, but also the parent you're working with, the student you're working with, and any other community member that you are brought into. Now on the right-hand side, you'll see, again, to reiterate, no cell phones are allowed on campus. Only time cell phones should be used is when walkie-talkies are down at your site and you need to get a hold of your site coordinator. And then lastly, no visitors. Although we love our students and we would love to share what they do and what we do in our program and what we do in our jobs, we are not allowed to have any visitors visit campus during those hours. Now let's dive into dress code. As you can see on the screen, that is our designated dress code. All of you will have received 2 blue Learn polos during onboarding, and then you'll be required to wear khaki pants. Khaki the color, doesn't necessarily have to be the khaki pants. And then black shoes, which must be closed-toed. On cold days, you're allowed to wear any of the following colors listed on screen underneath your polo. It's really important to recognize at all times that your polo is visible. This makes it easy for admin to spot you, parents to spot you, and also your site coordinator to come over when it's needed. Now looking at hair and accessories. Please make sure that your hair is always neat and clean. It's always in a normal range of hair color. No bright or neon colored hair is allowed. No extreme hairstyles. And earrings are allowed through the lobe, but no facial jewelry. The only facial jewelry that will be allowed is a discreet stud on your nose. And then all visible tattoos must be covered up. All right, so now we're going to jump into job performances. Now within your job performances, Learn hosts different types of evaluations. Evaluations provide program staff with the opportunity to learn and improve their skills in overall performances. Program staff will have a formal performance review every December and May of the year. Employees should expect frequent feedback on their work performance between evaluation periods. Site coordinators and supervisors will check for adherence to policies and procedures, as well as performance of your essential job duties. Some examples of evaluations could be sit-ins on classroom, check-ins with teachers and students that you work with, briefing and debriefing with you, site coordinator and supervisor observations, using a tool known as PSOT, Program Staff Observation Tool, and then as stated before, your Learn performance evaluation that will be done every December and May of the year. All of this is saved in your personnel records. Learn maintains personnel records on each employee. Employees are responsible for notifying the organization of any change in their personal data. An employee may inspect his or her own personnel file at any reasonable time with reasonable notice. Recruitment coordinator will need at least 48 hours notice to make an appointment to review such files. Please note that when you are changing any of your personal information, such as address, phone number, or email, you will be using our EWS system. There will be a later training on how to do such, and also note that if you have any other changes and you're not sure where to make them, talk to your direct supervisor. They'll point you in the right way. Now, disciplinary actions. In order to maintain the integrity and professionalism of our program, all staff will be held accountable for their conduct during work hours. Failure to adhere to the guidelines stated in this employee handbook will result in disciplinary actions, which may include the following, not necessarily in this order: a verbal warning, a written warning, otherwise known as a performance discussion recap, which is a written warning summarizing the violation or performance issued and documenting an agreed plan to improve performance moving forward. And last but not least is termination. Some of the items that may be grounds for immediate dismissal are as follows: insubordination of supervisors or school staff, endangering students, unprofessional demeanor, engaging in criminal activity, coming to work intoxicated, harassment, and/or theft. So now that we've covered standards of conduct, dress code, job performances, we're now going to get into more specific policies. The first section that we're going to cover is employee policies. Now within these policies, the first one is confidentiality policy. All employees and program participant information you receive, whether it's verbal or written, while working with the organization must be kept confidential. You may not share this information with anyone else under any circumstance, except as required by law. This includes, but is not limited to, the following: staff contact list, student rosters or attendance reports, student report cards, referral information or registration forms, your performance discussion recap, or other personnel information. Next is discrimination-free policy. All employees are responsible to not engage in any discriminatory activity while in the workplace, including, but not limited to, jokes of racial, ethnic, or sexual nature, images that derogatorily depict or describe differences associated with gender, religious groups, nationalities, sexual orientation, or the disabled, Please note that LEARN, in addition to federal and state laws, prohibits discrimination in employment. Next is harassment policy. Prohibited harassment includes verbal, physical, and visual conduct that creates an intimidating, offensive, or hostile work environment, or that interferes with work performance. This could include, but again not limited to, pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions, race, color, religion, sex, national origin, mental disability, medical conditions, and any other bias protected by applicable law. Sexual harassment policy. Sexual harassing conduct can produce a hostile and offensive working environment. May include such actions as visual conduct such as leering, making sexual gestures, pointedly looking at another's breast, buttocks, or genital areas, verbal comments such as doll, babe, honey, or similar names, discussion of one's own sexual problem or experiences. Workplace violence prevention. Types of behavior covered by this policy include, but are not limited to, violent physical actions, direct or implemented threats to do harm to another or to property, verbally abusive or intimidating languages or gestures. And note that LEARN is committed to maintaining a workplace that is free from violence or threats of violence. Our complaint policy. You are not required to report to your supervisor first. Any employee has the right to file a complaint, and note that all complaints are investigated. Any individual to whom a harassment complaint is reported or who learns of such complaint should immediately contact the Director of Programs, Leslie Lane. And please do not assume that LEARN is aware of what is happening. A complaint needs to be brought to the attention of the appropriate admin staff. Now let's look into our social media policy. Do not post any comments or pictures involving a coworker, student, or other person who works at LEARN without their express consent. An employee's use of social media could become a problem if it interferes with the employee's work, is used to harass or discriminate against coworkers or others we work with, creates a hostile work environment, divulges confidential information about our agencies, employees, or students, harms the goodwill and reputation of LEARN. LEARN has a social media page on using Instagram. If any post were to go through, it must be approved by your supervisor and move forward with sending it to them. That way, LEARN can control the content and make sure it is appropriate and safe to post on the internet. Now diving into what do you do if you get hurt while on the clock? Please tell your supervisor immediately. We want to document your incident even if it seems minor to you. It also lets us correct whatever situation may have caused you to be hurt. If your injury is life-threatening, dial 911. If your injury requires first aid treatment, like having a wound clean or an assessment of an injury, see the school nurse or your supervisor. If the school nurse or your supervisor decides that your injury needs further attention, you will need to go to the facility listed on the next slide. Your supervisor will then give you an authorization for medical treatment form. Please take a moment and make note of this facility listed on the screen. Now let's dive into resignation and terminations. Any voluntary resignation, LEARN requests that you provide 2 weeks' notice before resigning and making sure that that is in writing. A no is a failure to report to work after 3 consecutive work days without contacting your supervisor, or failure to return from a leave of absence within 3 days of your designated return date may be considered automatic resignation of your employment. Now, involuntary termination. Corrective or disciplinary actions may be taken for misconduct or failure to comply with learned policies. Corrective actions may include, but are not limited to, verbal warnings, written warnings, suspensions, demotions, or termination. When returning learned property, this could include, but is not limited to, ID badges, keys, cell phones, computers, and any other items that are documented that belong to learn. Employees will receive their final paycheck in accordance with applicable federal, state, or local laws. If you move within 1 year of your termination date, please notify Learn of your new address so that we may forward you your W-2. So we've covered a lot in this training already. The last section we are going to dive into is program policies. One note I'd like to make before jumping into program policies. Please ensure, again, that you have the Employee Handbook provided to you, so you're able to read in greater depth what these policies entail and what other information is provided in the Employee Handbook for you to review. Alright, with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into program policies. Now the first one is under our safety policies. Learn staff is responsible for the supervision of students at all times. At no time should a student be left unattended. High visibility of students' whereabouts is important at all times. Therefore, doors, windows, shades, and curtains are to remain open during operating hours. Students are not allowed to use the play structure, playground equipment, or the jungle gym. Staff is not to use restrooms designated for students. The site coordinator will identify restroom locations for staff use at your on-site orientation. One thing I do want to note is, as stated, high visibility of students' whereabouts is important at all times. To do so, position yourself correctly in the classroom or outside. In the picture on the screen, you'll notice that the teacher is in front of the classroom. Casual, and usually that's where we see teachers. But what you'll notice is there are no students behind his back. And that's one part of safety policies that will really support you in this position. Ensure that you always have students within your whereabouts and your eyesight. So by stepping back and choosing a corner of the room, you're able to see students at all times. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into restroom use. Now, students in grades kinder through 3rd are not allowed to go to the restroom without a staff escort. While walking to the restroom, students must remain in the front of the staff member, within his or her view. Staff member must remain near the restroom doorway, with their view away from the restroom, keeping the door propped open with his or her foot to ensure that unsafe and improper behavior is not occurring. Now that goes for our Aspire program, or any program that works with kinder through 8th grade. Also note that at most school sites, the doors are already propped open, so there's no need for you to prop open the door with your foot, but you still need to be in earshot to make sure that there is no unsafe or improper behavior occurring in the bathrooms. For our high school students within our prep program, students will sign out using pencil when they're going to the restroom. Upon their return, students will then erase their sign out times and return to the club they are participating in. Ideally, students should take no longer than 10 minutes in the restroom. For our prep programs, this is really important to have students sign out in pencil. If we allow students to leave the program to go to the restroom, they are still technically signed in. If they do not come back, then we will have to make account of where their location is and start calling parents and other guardians to make sure that they are safe. So it's really important that we are documenting when they are using the restroom. And then again, staff members should not use student restrooms. They will only use the designated restrooms for adults within the school site. Missing student policy. If a student has reported to program staff member to participate in its service for the day, but then becomes missing, the staff member must notify the site coordinator by walkie-talkie or phone immediately upon becoming aware that the fact has gone missing. In case of a missing student, the following procedures will be followed. Site coordinator will immediately call all of the student's personnel and emergency contacts until reached. Site coordinator will contact supervisor and principal immediately. If the student is not found within half an hour after programming has ended for the day, the site coordinator will then call 911 and file a missing child report at the discretion of his or her supervisor and the principal. Site coordinator will complete and submit an incident report to the supervisor and the principal at the end of the day. Our behavior policy. Program staff will not use harsh discipline methods, and program policy prohibits corporal punishment, withholding nutrition or hydration, inflicting physical or psychological pain, demeaning, shaming, or degrading language or activities, unnecessarily punitive restrictions, forced physical exercise to eliminate behavior, punitive work assignments, punishment by peers, and group punishment or discipline for individual behavior. Bullying. Bullying is an unwanted, aggressive behavior that involves a real or perceived power imbalance. The behavior is repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. Bullying includes actions such as making threats, spreading rumors, attacking someone physically or verbally, and excluding someone from a group on purpose. Bullying is not tolerated and must be reported to site coordinator immediately. One note to make on bullying is this could occur between two students of any grade level. It can also occur from a youth leader to a student, a parent to a youth leader, or any of those combinations included. Again, bullying is not tolerated at any level. So as soon as you become aware of any type of bullying that is happening within our programs, please connect with your site coordinator immediately. Head injury protocol. How can I spot a possible concussion? Signs observed by program staff or coaches. Appears dazed or stunned, forgets an instruction, or is confused about an assignment or position, or is unsure of the game, score, or opponent. Moves clumsily, answers questions slowly, loses consciousness even briefly, shows mood, behavior, or personality changes, can't recall events prior to or after a hit or fall. And then symptoms reported by children and teens. They may say, I have a headache or pressure in the head. I feel nauseous, or I feel like vomiting. And you may also see that they state, I have balance problems or dizziness or double or blurred vision. In all of our programs, we provide some sort of recreational activity. Please note that head injuries don't only occur in recreational activities. They could occur throughout the day for any possible reason. So it's important for you to recognize the signs of concussions, and you may also ask for a concussion sheet from your site coordinator to be provided to you. And then with head injuries, what do you do? So if a student has a head injury, any type of head injury, please immediately remove the child or teen from the physical activity and observe for signs and symptoms of a concussion. Those signs and symptoms were listed on the page before. Call 911 right away if the student has one or more of these serious danger signs. One pupil is larger than the other, drowsiness or inability to wake up, a headache that gets worse and does not go away, slurred speech, weakness, numbness, or decreased coordination, repeating vomiting or nausea, convulsions, or seizures. Please note, if a child or teen does not show any of the more serious danger signs that were listed above, they may still have a concussion. Even if the child or teen shows no signs and reports no symptoms, in this case, the following actions must be taken. Again, keep the child or teen out of physical activity for the day of the injury. Remain with the child or teen and ask the nearest program staff member to immediately notify the following parties of the head injury: program coordinator, school office staff, and then the child or teen's parents or guardians. And for head injury, what documentation is needed? No matter how minor, all head injuries require an incident report that's shown on the left side. This must be filled out by the youth leader at the time of the incident. Once filled out, youth leader will then walk you over to the site coordinator, who will then watch the student while the youth leader calls the parent to inform them of this incident. As you can see on the left-hand side, there are different sections that need to be filled out. The very top section, you'll need to include the date, the time that the incident occurred, the student's name, date of birth, and school. The crucial information that needs to be marked down at that time is date, time of incident, and then the student's name. That's really important for if it turns into a serious issue. It's important for the doctor to understand and see what time this incident occurred, and is it still happening hours later. The next, you'll find the body of this report. You'll do the description of the incident, what exactly happened. This is where you will include objective language. Objective language is stating exactly what happens and not what you think happened. You will state exactly what you saw, or you will get support from the staff member who did see it, and they will fill out exactly what they saw. An example of this is during recreation time. Jimmy was playing soccer. As Jimmy was running towards the ball, another student kicked the ball and the ball hit Jimmy in the head. Jimmy then fell to the ground and said his head was hurting. That is exactly what you saw, and that is exactly what should be included. And then the next few items are actions taken to resolve incident. What did you do to support this incident? Did you give the student an ice pack? Did you remove them from the game? All of that needs to be included. And the last section is additional comments. This could be any comment that maybe the student made during time of incident, such as listing any of the signs, dizziness, nausea, anything like that. Or this can be a comment that you have when you call the parent. If the parent states they can't pick them up right now, but they'll pick them up at 5 o'clock, that's when you would include it in that additional comments. Now looking into our safety policy, other than head injuries. Accidents causing bodily harm are to be reported immediately to site coordinators. They will then take proper care in following standard emergency procedures, including following all school emergency procedures that exist during school hours. And then after the nurse have left, they will determine the severity of the injury. They will access the student's medical release form, call all emergency medical assistance, contacting the parent or the family's physician, school administration, and the Learn Main office. Now, student safety at pickup. This policy really adheres to our SPIRE program. Our PREP program, students are signing themselves in and out. So they don't have authorized adults that could pick them up. Unless they are hurt, then you'll connect with your site coordinator. Now, in regards to this specific policy, program participants must be released to an authorized adult only. Authorized adults are listed under the registration form as parent, guardian, emergency contact, or other persons authorized to pick up student. An authorized adult must pick up grades kinder through 5th grade. Students in 6th through 8th grade may sign themselves out to walk home at the end of the program only if the parent or guardian has authorized them to do so in the registration form. Staff will not release any child or teen to anyone, including parents, suspected to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Failure to adhere to this policy may subject program staff to immediate termination. Now let's look into program release times. Students must be picked up no later than 6 p.m. If a student is not picked up 30 minutes after program has ended, staff is authorized to call the local police department to pick up the student. For our PREP program, during programming, again, students are to sign themselves in and out using the student sign-in out form provided by the site coordinator. In regards to medication, no medication will be administered during Learn program or during Learn sponsored activity without the parent or guardian's signature and physician's signature on the authorized form you see on the left-hand side. The parent is responsible for submitting a new authorization to medicate form to the program each time there is a change of dosage or time of administration, and for providing medication to cover the appropriate length and dosage needed. In no case may any program staff member administer any medication, even over-the-counter medication such as aspirin or Tylenol, outside of the framework of the procedures outlined on this form. Now let's look into field trips. All students and general safety policies are in place in addition to these measures. Student supervision. On a field trip, the ratio turns into 10 to 1. 10 students per 1 staff member. Students must remain with their assigned group and assigned youth leader at all times. Adult supervision is required at all times on the bus and during the field trip. Fundraising policy. Learn recognizes that fundraising at the site level has become an important source of providing for needs over and above the available through grant funding. Program staff may not purchase items or materials for their students. Check with your direct supervisor for guidance and approval if you have an idea for fundraising at your site. Staff must fill out the fundraising proposal form for all fundraising efforts, which must be approved by Learn and the school principal in advance. Engaging in any of the defined fundraising activities outlined above without prior written approval from Learn is grounds for immediate termination. Our wellness policy. Please be aware that Learn follows all school and district nutrition and wellness policies in addition to the nutrition guidelines required by our grant funding. You are not permitted to provide or allow outside food, candy, or organized celebrations for your students without express advance approval from your supervisor. See your supervisor for ideas for non-food-based celebrations and other healthy alternatives. This wellness policy also covers if you are bringing a snack for work. Please make sure that this snack falls under the nutrition and health guidelines if eating with the students or near the students. And last but not least, we're going to cover some information about mandated reporting. Please note that you all will take a longer online training in regards to mandated reporting and what signs to look for and how to report. These slides are just going to cover what it is and how to move forward. Now, within California Penal Code listed on the screen, states that a mandated reporter of child abuse is an administrator or employee of a public or private organization whose duties require direct contact and supervision of children, aka you. Reports of child abuse should be referred directly to the California Department of Social Service, Children and Family Service Division. Any staff member may file a report anonymously. An employee suspecting child abuse, neglect, must immediately, or as soon as practically possible, make their mandated suspect child abuse report from telephone to the appropriate child protective agency, either the Department of Children and Family Services or local law enforcement department serving the students. These numbers and resources can be seen on screen. Never contact the child or alleged perpetrator's parent or guardian if indicators point to possible abuse, or if abuse is suspected prior to making a report. Consequences for reporting or failure to report. A violation of learned policy and the law may lead to disciplinary actions up to termination from the organization. Generally, district employees are immune from civil and criminal liability when reporting suspected child abuse as required by law. Failure to report suspected child abuse is a misdemeanor punishable by imprisonment in the county jail for a maximum of 6 months and fine up to $1,000 or both. Overall, please note, any type of child abuse or suspected child abuse, you are a mandated reporter. If you suspect abuse or child endangerment, you need to act immediately. And you've made it to the end of the Employee Handbook training. Thank you for taking time to watch this video. And again, refer back to the Employee Handbook to review in greater detail. Last but not least, always remember to go back onto your Cybertrain account, go to requirements, make sure that this video stays on demand, and then you're going to go to classes. Once you go to classes, please make sure to take the test. As soon as you take the test, that'll let the system know that you have completed this requirement. Thank you so much.